The South African history of ANC and MK in exile, Angola. The forces fighting the War of Liberation in Angola were divided into three. The Socialist Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, the Front for the National Liberation of Angola, FLNA, and the Pro-Capitalist National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, UNITA. Initially, the MPLA and UNITA cooperated with fighting their common enemy, the Portuguese colonizers, but in the course of the Cold War they became opponents. The South African government supported Portuguese white minority rule in Angola. As early as February 1968, the MPLA was supporting the South African helicopters in southeast Angola were attacking MPLA position. Angola became the only country in Southern Africa where South Africa engaged in conventional war. In addition, the United States of America, USA, also supported the Portuguese. But the 1974 coup in Portugal forced it to accede to demands for independence in its African colonies. After 14 years of armed resistance against the Portuguese, the MPLA, the FLNA, the UNITA signed the Alvar Agreement in January 1975, paving way for the independence of Angola. On 11th November 1975, Angola became independent and the MPLA seized power with the backing of the Soviet Union and Cuba. But due to political and ideological differences between the MPLA and UNITA, civil war broke out. Unhappy with the MPLA's rise to power, the South African government established relations with UNITA to destabilize Angola. In the ensuing civil war, the MPLA was backed by the Soviet Union, which provided training and equipment, while UNITA was backed by the United States and South Africa. In South Africa, the African National Congress, ANC, was also backed by the Soviet Union and German Democratic Republic, GDR, in its fight against the apartheid government. Thus, for the United States and South Africa, UNITA was a front against the spread of communism. As a result of this polarized geopolitical context, the ANC allied itself with the MPLA. For 13 years between 1976 and 1988, Angola served as an MK military training ground. The establishment of camps in Angola. The independence of Angola paved the way for other liberation movements in Southern Africa to establish bases for military training in the newly independent country. For instance, the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, and the Southwest African People Organization, SWAPO, established bases in Angola. At the beginning of 1976, the ANC began negotiations with the Angola government to establish bases for military training. That same year, the ANC set up the Central Operations Headquarters of uMkhonto weSizwe MK and began a process of establishing military training camps in Angola. By the end of 1976, the ANC had established its first military base in Angola. Cassius Maake was appointed as the ANC's representative and, working closely with Max Moabi, did the groundwork for the establishment of bases. Mzwandile Piliso was appointed the person in charge of all the camps in Angola. The first group of MK soldiers was sent to a camp south of Luanda in Gabela. By late October and early November 1976, other MK cadres were brought from Tanzania and sent to a transit camp called Engineering. Funda, another camp located just outside the Angolan capital Luanda, began operating in 1976. Camps Gabela and Engineering were closed in 1977 as people were moved to Nova Katengwe, popularly known as the University of the South, in the south. In 1979, the Quadro base was established as a prison and rehabilitation center where enemy agents caught after infiltrating the ANC were to be re-educated. Just prior to an attack, several members of the ANC were moved from Nova Katengwe to Pango, another camp north of Luanda. A transit camp known as Qibaqe was opened in 1977 and another camp, Fazenda, was established in 1978. Another Zimbabwean independence in 1980, ZAPU left Angola for Zimbabwe and left two of their camps, Kakulama and Kamalundi, for the use of the ANC. Other camps included Camp 32 and Hoji Yahenda. In addition to the camps, the ANC also occupied blocks of flats in Luanda, for example Resistance 1, which housed members of the leadership and command. Residence 2 was a general residence. The latter's house was donated to the ANC by ZAPU when they left Angola in 1980. Another block of flats housed Radio Freedom and a warehouse which stored food and clothing for cadres. A printing press established in Luanda under Patrick Sebina was used to produce Dawn and other bulletins. The first detachment to graduate from the Angolan military training camps was the June 16 detachment, composed of MK's first set of recruits after the uprising in 1976. This was followed by the Moncada detachment in 1978, named after the July 26 movement in Cuba, which stormed the Moncada barracks, and the Modinonga detachment, named after the Zero's woman arrested during the peasant revolts of the late 1950s. The Isandlwana detachment, named after the Battle of Isandlwana, when the Zulu regiments defeated the British forces in 1879, was another unit that came out of Angola. Detachments consisted of company commander, a commissar, a training team covering various aspects of military training, and political instructors. A regional commander was appointed and all structures in Angola reported to the Revolutionary Council. Each camp had a commander, commissar, chief of staff, and a medical team set at the top of the hierarchical structure. The camp commissar, whose task was deal with the political life of cadres, was assisted by a chief of staff, chief of logistics, and a recording officer. Stay tuned for the continuation video. And that's it from INJIBS Network. Stay tuned to our celebrity and gossip news.